Have you ever felt safe somewhere, truly safe, only to realize in one terrible moment that safety was just an illusion? That's what happened to Elena Vasquez on an ordinary Sunday afternoon in her quiet neighborhood of Cedar Ridge. Elena was a woman who knew danger. She'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan as a military K-9 handler. She'd trained dogs to sniff out bombs, track enemies through dust storms, and protect soldiers in combat. She knew fear, real fear, the kind that comes with gunfire and uncertainty. But nothing prepared her for the fear she'd feel in her own driveway. It was just past 5 p.m. The sun hung low, painting the sky in warm oranges and pinks. Elena had spent the day helping her cousin move into a new apartment. She was tired, wearing leggings, old combat boots, and a faded army hoodie. Her 2 Belgian Malinois, Rex and Nova, were in the back of her SUV, calm, disciplined the way she'd trained them. They weren't just pets. They were soldiers just like her. She pulled into her driveway, the gravel crunching under her tires. She reached for the garage remote, just like she'd done 1,000 times before. Then she noticed her. A woman across the street. Blonde. Yoga pants. Phone in hand. Staring. Elena didn't recognize her. Must be new to the neighborhood, she thought. She gave a polite nod and kept backing in. She had no idea that woman had already dialed 911. Less than 3 minutes later, sirens shattered the quiet. Elena barely had time to turn off the engine before police cars screeched into her cul-de-sac, boxing her in. Doors flew open. Officers jumped out, guns drawn, shouting, "Step out of the vehicle. Hands where we can see them." Elena froze. This wasn't Afghanistan. This wasn't a war zone. This was her home. Her heart pounded, but her voice stayed steady. "This is my house. I live here." They didn't listen. One officer, his finger too close to the trigger, barked again. "License and registration." "Now." Elena moved slowly, deliberately. But then, a sound from the back of her SUV. A low warning growl. Rex and Nova had heard enough. With a single tap on her console, the back door of her SUV clicked open. The officers tensed. What stepped out wasn't a threat. It was 2 highly trained military dogs. Their vests marked clearly, U.S. Army. "Do not pet." Rex stood tall beside Elena's door. Nova positioned herself like a shield between her and the officers. Silence. The cops' faces changed. Suddenly, they weren't looking at a suspicious black woman anymore. They were looking at a soldier. Funny, isn't it? They didn't believe me when I said I lived here. They didn't believe me when I said I was a veteran. But the second they saw those dogs, the second they saw the vests, they hesitated. The officers lowered their weapons. The one who'd been shouting, Officer Perez, cleared his throat. Ma'am, we got a call about a break-in. You matched the description." Elena didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just said, "The description of what?" "A woman with a car and dogs." Across the street, the blonde neighbor, Kimberlyn, watched, her face unreadable. No apology. No shame. Just silence. "That day I learned something. You can serve your country. You can train for war. You can come home thinking you've earned your peace. But none of that matters if someone decides, just by looking at you, that you don't belong." Have you ever had a moment, just one moment, that changed everything? For Elena Vasquez, it wasn't the guns pointed at her. It wasn't even the dogs stepping in to protect her. No. It was what happened after. Because while Elena sat in her car that day, hands steady on the wheel, trying to make sense of why her own home had become a war zone, someone was watching. Someone was recording. And in just 74 seconds, the whole world would see what really happened. Franklin Yates was a man of few words. A retired construction worker with bad knees. He spent most afternoons on his porch, sipping root beer and watching the neighborhood go by. He'd seen Elena come and go for years, watched her shovel snow for elderly neighbors, wave to kids on bikes, train her dogs in the backyard. So when the police cars came screaming down the street, when he saw officers jump out with guns drawn, pointed at Elena, he didn't hesitate. He pulled out his phone. And he hit record. Sometimes justice doesn't come from courts or badges. Sometimes it comes from an old man on a porch who refuses to look away. The footage was raw, unedited. No dramatic music. No commentary. Just the truth. You could hear the cops shouting. See the way their hands trembled on their weapons. Watch the exact second Rex and Nova stepped out. Not attacking, not barking. Just standing there like living proof that Elena was exactly who she said she was. And then, the internet exploded. Within hours. 100,000 views. By morning, 500,000. News vans parked on Elena's street. Reporters shouted questions she didn't answer. The police department issued a shaky statement about miscommunication. And Kimberlyn, the woman who'd made the call, she deleted her social media. Vanished. Funny how some people can point a finger so easily. Until the whole world points back. Elena didn't want the spotlight. She just wanted to walk her dogs in peace. But then her cousin Marisol called. "Elena," she said, voice fierce. "If you don't tell your story, someone else will. And they'll get it wrong." So Elena agreed to one interview. No major networks. No sound bites. Just a local journalist, Tawny Wren, sitting on Elena's front porch with a single camera. No scripts. No retakes. Just the truth. Tawny asked a simple question. "What went through your mind when you saw those guns pointed at you?" Elena didn't cry. Didn't raise her voice. She just said, "I thought. This is how it happens. This is how a veteran who survived 2 tours gets killed. Not overseas. Not in combat. But in her own driveway. Because someone assumed the worst about me before they even knew my name." Then, quieter. "Those officers only lowered their guns when they saw my dogs' vests. Think about that. They trusted military training more than they trusted me." The interview lasted 20 minutes. Changed everything. The police department scrambled. Officers were reassigned. New policies were promised. And Kimberlyn. She finally reappeared. Not to apologize to Elena's face, but to post a vague message online. "I was just trying to protect my neighborhood. I didn't know who she was." Funny, isn't it? She knew every other neighbor's name. Just not mine. Amid the chaos, one letter stood out. From a fellow veteran, a Marine named Javier. "My 8-year-old saw your video. She asked me, 'Daddy, why were those policemen scared of that lady?' I didn't know what to say. Until I showed her your interview. Now she knows the truth. Thank you for that." That's when I realized. This wasn't just about me anymore. I never asked for this. Never wanted cameras on my lawn or my face on the news. But if my story made one person think twice before calling the police on someone who looked suspicious, if it made one officer pause before drawing their weapon, then maybe, just maybe, it was worth it. There are moments in life when you have to choose. Do you stay silent or do you stand up and make them hear you? For Elena Vasquez, that moment came at the Cedar Ridge Town Hall meeting. The room was packed. Reporters lined the walls. Police officials sat stiffly in the front row. And in the back, half hidden behind oversized sunglasses, was Kimberlyn, the woman who'd started it all. Elena hadn't planned to speak. But then the mayor stood up, cleared his throat, and said the words that lit a fire in her chest. "While we regret this unfortunate misunderstanding." That's when Elena stood up. And the room fell silent. She didn't march to the microphone. She walked, slow, steady, the way she'd moved through minefields overseas. Rex and Nova followed at her heels, their nails clicking against the floor. When she spoke, her voice didn't shake. "My name is Elena Vasquez. I live on Oakview Drive. I served this country for 12 years. Beep. And I shouldn't have to say any of that just to prove I belong in my own neighborhood." She looked straight at the police chief. "You called what happened to me a misunderstanding. But here's the truth. Your officers didn't misunderstand. They assumed. They assumed a black woman with a big car and dogs must be a criminal. They assumed I was guilty until proven innocent. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Elena kept going. You know what my dogs did that day? What real training looks like. They stood their ground without attacking. They assessed the threat before reacting. Maybe your officers could learn from them. After the meeting, Kimberlyn approached her in the parking lot. I just wanted to say sorry, she stammered. I didn't mean for things to go so far. Elena studied her. The perfectly highlighted hair, the designer handbag, the way she couldn't quite meet her eyes. Did you ever think, Elena asked quietly, to just come over and introduce yourself? Maybe ask about my dogs before calling 911. Kimberlyn flushed. I didn't think. Exactly. And with that, Elena turned and walked away. Some people will apologize for the consequences of their actions, but not for the actions themselves. The city implemented new policies, the Vasquez Protocol, requiring officers to verify homeownership before drawing weapons. The police chief resigned. Kimberlyn moved away 6 months later. But the moment that stuck with Elena happened at the grocery store. A little black girl, no older than 7, tugged her mom's sleeve and whispered, "Look, Mama. It's the lady with the army dogs." Her mother smiled. "That's right, baby. That's Ms. Vasquez. She's a hero." Elena froze. She wasn't a hero. She was just a woman who'd refused to be silent. But to that little girl, maybe that was the same thing. I didn't set out to change the world. I just wanted to come home. But sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is stand in your truth and let the world adjust around you. Because you don't have to be loud to be heard. You just have to be unshakable.